With us is Mary Grant, the Public Water for All Director at Food and Water Watch, the website foodandwaterwatch.org. Food and Water is the Twitter handle, or Mary Grant _water. Mary, welcome to the program. This moment when we are learning that large swaths of the American public water supplies are contaminated with these cancer-causing forever chemicals and things like this, I understand that the Republicans are planning a 64% cut in programs for clean water. What the heck is going on here? I'm not hearing
timing on their part to propose massive cuts to our safe water and clean water. They just released a proposed budget or a spending bill for water, for the clean water and drinking water state revolving fund programs. These are the main source of federal funding for safe water and wastewater systems, and it's at the lowest levels ever proposed in the history of these programs. This is unprecedented and reckless.
Why would Republicans want to cut back on clean water? I mean, they drink water too. Is it just that the polluting companies are spiffing them? You know, is this just more political bribery, or is there some weird ideology here? Or do they somehow think that, you know, maybe it's like, you know, the magical thinking around COVID, like, yeah, we're all immune, it doesn't matter what's in our water?
They're saying it's in the name of cost cutting. So it's just about austerity, reducing the size of government. Historically, these programs have had broad bipartisan support. Every community across the country really needs safe water, like you said, and these programs have been used by communities across the country, big and small. They're wildly successful, and everyone says that they work well. We need to fix some things around how we can get money to disadvantaged communities, but they're very successful and have historically, traditionally enjoyed bipartisan support. So it was very upsetting to see such a massive cut proposed this year, just in the name of like political showmanship, mostly, I think, to propose this massive cut. We're going to streamline government, but cutting the basic programs that make our government function is really alarming to see happen, particularly after decades of bipartisan support.
Yeah, I totally get it. Republicans control the House of Representatives right now. Is there a chance that this cut, this massive budget cut to clean water programs nationwide, that they are proposing, they can hold the line on? Or is this just, you know, like you said, performance art, and you know, they'll change their tune or back down or whatever when push comes to shove?
Well, this is proposed in the House. After the House marks it up, it'll need to go to negotiations with the Senate. So we are hoping that it's dead on arrival in the Senate. So we're calling on senators to reject this out of hand, to not cut these essential water programs. But, you know, this is setting a tune for the future Congresses. What happens if the Senate changes over during the next election? Like, this is very alarming to keep in mind about how we need to protect our essential water and sewer programs, and to hold the line so that they're not cut back. It's very alarming to see this happen. I mean, these are programs that were created under the Reagan administration. So for decades now, they've enjoyed bipartisan support. And so now it's just in the name of this like really far right, like austerity, that we're seeing them being proposed for massive cuts.
So probably the force behind this are the right-wing billionaires who don't want their taxes to go up to pay for the commons. I'm just guessing, but so Mary, let's we're talking with Mary Grant, the Public Water for All Director at foodandwaterwatch.org. Let's drill down a little deeper into this, no pun intended. What specifically do these programs do that the Republicans want to cut?
Sure. So this is the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program and the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Program. These are the main sources of federal funding for building drinking water systems, updating treatment plants, removing PFAS from our drinking water, and updating our wastewater systems, stopping sewage overflows. These are the programs that keep your drinking water safe, that help clean up your waterways. So we're not seeing rivers on fire because of all the pollution from wastewater systems. These are essential programs that it's the main source of federal funding for water and and wastewater programs across the country. These are allocated to the states. The states have a project priority list. They give projects based on need to communities to help make those updates that keep our drinking water safe and keep our waterways clean.
Wow. Wow. And if these funds are cut, does it, I mean, are we, for example, you know, Anytown, USA, so your average city, or community, will there be immediate deleterious effects, or does this, you know, hurt more like long-range planning kind of things, or you know, building new water treatment systems, or, you know, specifically what kind of impact would this kind of a cut have on the average person in America?
So we're going to see two main impacts. For communities that have resources to make improvements on their own, it's going to lead to rate increases on households. This is at a time when the price of all the essentials is going up. Families are already seeing higher and higher rates for food and everything and rent. So this is going to add more pressure onto households when their household water and sewer bills go up to make these necessary improvements. Then on the other hand, there's communities that just simply cannot afford to make these improvements. This is going to leave those communities with toxic water. You're talking about cities like Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi, that had decades of federal and state disinvestment because the states weren't allocating the funding to these communities. That created a crisis because without that support, many communities across the country, disproportionately low-income communities, communities of color, disadvantaged communities, they can't make the projects on their own without this support. So that's going to leave toxic water. This is going to lead polluted waterways, sewage spills, sewage backing up into homes. This has the potential to create a crisis if we do not invest in our water systems.
I think you just identified why these Republicans want to cut these funds, because, you know, the wealthy communities will be just fine. You know, their water bill may go up a little bit, but they can afford it. Poor communities are going to take the brunt of it. That in and of itself is kind of a nice summary of the post-Reagan GOP, it seems. I mean, it's just almost like cruelty for its own sake. I'm just shocked. Is there any pushback in Congress? I mean, are the Democrats standing up and making noise about this, or are you guys the lone voice in the wilderness? How is this playing out politically in D.C.?
Yeah, so it is under attack in Congress. There are advocates in Congress right now who oppose these cuts. We work closely with Representative Bonnie Watson-Coleman from New Jersey. She's the lead sponsor on a really great piece of legislation called the Water Act, the Water Affordability, Transparency, Equity, and Reliability Act. It would fully fund our water systems at the level that EPA says is necessary to comply with federal laws. It would create a trust fund to remove our water system funding from these annual appropriations battles. So it's not a bargaining chip for political bargaining chip in Congress anymore. So this is the vision that we want to see, is to remove it from these annual appropriations battle, to create this trust fund, a dedicated source of federal funding for our water and sewer system, so we don't have to worry about the safety of our water anymore. What does any of this have to do with, and I get it, the answer may be nothing, but to do with the issue around, you know, about half of our public utilities, and I don't know what it is with water, I know with electricity it's around half, being privately owned and run on a for-profit basis, and very often being run very poorly on a for-profit basis, compared to, you know, municipally owned or county-owned water systems that are run not for profit, but rather run for the benefit of their customers? Yeah, so in the United States, about 90% of people who are on a community water system, so if you get piped water service, you're going to get it from your local government or another government entity. But private systems serve about 10% of people, and absolutely right, they charge significantly higher rates. We worked on a study with researchers from Cornell University, and we found that private ownership is associated with a 59% higher household water bill. And it is the single biggest factor leading to higher water bills, even more than aging infrastructure, more than drought, which was very surprising to us. So we're also seeing across the country aggressive efforts by these large water companies to take control of our essential water and sewer systems. We're seeing a lot of privatization activity in states like Pennsylvania right now, where they've passed state laws that grease the wheels on privatization by making it more profitable for them to do business. And it's actually really interesting. Right now in Congress, we're also seeing legislation to open up that main source of federal funding for wastewater systems to these large investor-owned utilities. There's a bill out there called the Clean Water SRF Parity Act. They call it a parity act. They have really good names of the private water industry, but it's legislation of the private water industry to open up that main source of federal funding, the Clean Water SRF, to these large investor-owned utilities. So at the same time we're seeing these large cuts in funding, we're also seeing more players want to take that limited, available pie away, which would necessarily take money away from local governments. Every dollar a large investor-owned utility gets is a dollar that would not be going to a local government. So yeah, this is what the companies are doing right now. They're trying to take that, get access to that funding, take it away from local governments. At the same time, the available funding is falling.
Amazing. You can read all about it over at foodandwaterwatch.org. Mary Grant, the Public Water for All Director, Food and Water on Twitter. Mary, thanks so much for dropping by today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, great talking with you. That was very informative. Thank you. We'll be back with more of the news of the day in just a moment. Stay tuned.